This is Chandler Bolt with selfpublishing.com, and you're listening to EA Interviews.
EA Interviews, episode 370.
Inspiration, transformation, success stories, and the Imperfect Action Round. 7 days a week. Join Mario Ficini for today's Expert Authority Effect interview.
Have you ever thought about publishing a book? You've seen them everywhere. There's New York Times bestsellers. There's this bestsellers. There's, oh man, I wish I could do that. Do I have to go curl up in a cabin and sit down by the lake and just spend years and years writing all the stuff I want to? Do you do a memoir, a fiction, this, that, the other thing? Have you ever considered it for business? I am super excited to have none other than the CEO of Self-Publishing School here, Chandler Bolt, and the author of Published. We're going to be answering all of this and more right after we thank our sponsor. So you've got your book mostly written, but now what? Visit getmybusinessbookpublished.com today to learn how you can publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's getmybusinessbookpublished.com. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Chandler Bolt. Chandler, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, Mario. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been seeing what you're doing for some time and seeing you at different conferences where we have mutual friends. It's so great to see what you're doing, the people you're helping, and how you're helping them, because there's a lot of people who do publishing out there, and there's so many varying degrees, but you've done it and turned it into a 7- and 8-figure business in a big way, because I know you have a big heart and you want to help a lot of people. So how did you get into it, and why publishing?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of an unlikely path. I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD. So for a lot of people, the last person they'd ever think to write a book. But I think, sometimes they say the worst students are the best teachers because I know what it feels like to struggle and to not understand something and to have this thing that's intimidating like a book. And so how I got into it is wrote and published a couple of books. They did decently well. And then I dropped out of school to go all in on running a business. And at the time I was working on a business that was just failing. And meanwhile, people kept asking about the book publishing stuff. It's like, how have you published these books? How'd you do it? And I would just get on the phone for an hour for free just to teach them everything I knew, just to be a nice person. And eventually, kind of like I said, you only get smacked in the face so many times before you turn around and look. And you turn around and look, and there's a whole line of people that won't help with that thing. And so that ultimately became the creation of what's now Self-Publishing School and selfpublishing.com. And we've been scaling and growing since then. And so kind of the ethos of what we do, or not even what we do, but just why we do, is we believe that books change lives. And so books change the lives of books change the lives of readers, right? It's like, how many of us have had our lives changed by reading a book? Probably 100%. Everyone listening to this, right? And so books change the lives of readers, but they also change the lives of authors. We always say it's not about the book, it's about who you become in the process of writing and publishing that book. And so we exist to change lives through books. We're on a mission to help 100,000 people publish their book by 2035. We've got about 6,000 books published in the last 6 years. So we got a lot of good progress, but a lot more work to do. And so that's why we wake up every day, and we're excited to help people publish books.
Now, that is so inspiring, because I do believe they do help the author and they help the reader. It helps everyone. I mean, I was just joking, no matter what happens with the technical, the social media, the marketing, any of this stuff, last I checked, books have been around a couple thousand years and they're not going anywhere. So for someone that's listening going, well, I don't know if I can lock myself in the cabin or I can do this, what do you say to someone who really has a passion and they really want to get their message out there, but they just don't know how to start? What would you say is the first step?
Yeah, so the first step, so really the most important thing if you're trying to get started is to get your rough draft done as quickly as possible. Now, you can't get your rough draft done if you don't first get started with your rough draft. But that's the most important thing. So I don't want you to think about your cover, your title, your marketing plan, any of that. It's how do I get my rough draft done as quickly as possible? Because once that happens, you're going to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to start to believe that this is possible. But before that, you got to get started, right? So I have this concept, I call it the more writing method. More is an acronym. And this is how you get started. So number one, M stands for mind map. Okay. And so what I'd encourage everyone listening, watching, however you're consuming this, grab a blank sheet of printer paper, and you can either pause right now, or you can wait till the end of this episode. But so right as soon as this episode's over, grab that blank sheet of paper, put your book topic in the middle of the page. And I want you to put a timer for 15 minutes. And I want you to write out everything you can think of on that topic. And so brainstorm ideas you have, stories you have, broken record conversations you've had on this topic, anything you can think of onto the page. So you're going to create a mind map. Then the O stands for outline. So you turn your mind map into an outline for the book as a whole. And then the R stands for rough draft. So you're going to get your rough draft written. I'll come back to that in just a second. And then the E stands for editing. And so that's the more writing method: mind map, outline, rough draft, editing. And to zoom in on that rough draft piece, you'll start with chapter number 1. You'll spend 10 minutes mind mapping everything you can think of on that chapter, 10 minutes turning that mind map into an outline for that chapter, then 45 minutes to an hour and a half writing the chapter, and you'll repeat that process chapter by chapter by chapter. Now, some people write better than they speak. And so this makes this process easier, is do the same thing, mind map, outline, but then speak the chapter, get it transcribed, repeat that process chapter by chapter by chapter. So that's really the starting point for most people, is get your mind map. That's going to show you, oh, wow, like I've got so much that I can talk about on this topic. And then that's going to help you move faster through the rest of the process.
I love how you have it laid out and also have it the acronym for it, because I know there's people who go, I have no problem writing, or I have a manuscript, but then they get stuck at the editing, or they never revise it, or, you know, there's people who are freaked out about the editing. They never start the process. You know, that first step is the most important thing.
Yes.
What would you say to someone who's going, well, I need a website. I need the ISBN. Should I be on Amazon Kindle or Barnes? Like, they're just all over here, and they just don't know what to write with. Do you focus on any specific niche of books, or do you help people with fiction, nonfiction, memoirs, the whole shebang?
Yeah. So two-part question. What I would say to those folks is, don't worry about any of that stuff until your rough draft's done. Nothing matters but your rough draft until your rough draft is done. Now, as far as what type of books we help with, we've been predominantly nonfiction, using books to grow your business. But over the last few years, we've developed a lot of other curriculum. So we've got children's book school. We've got the fundamentals of fiction and story. We've got a full-time fiction program for folks who want to make a full-time living from their fiction writing. We've created a bunch of memoir-specific curriculum and that sort of thing. But then also, we have tons of people. We publish about 2 books a day. And so we have tons of people in all different genres. So I know just yesterday, one of our students published a Indian vegan cookbook for crockpot cooking, I think, or something. So just such a niche, such a niche topic. So that it kind of runs the gamut.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, let's talk about that niche, because some people, they want to go wide, and other people, that's very specific. It's not just Indian vegan, but it's specific cooking, and then crockpot, because, there's a million and one. I personally enjoy sous vide, the sous vide method. But, there's books on that. There's books on crockpot. There's cookbooks on oven and all of this. What would you recommend to someone who goes, I want to speak on this, but there's all these different avenues. Should I niche down, or should I go more broad?
Yeah, the riches are in the niches. You're going to do much better by being specific. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see authors make, is you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. And so they write this book, it's how to live an awesome life and pursue your passion and chase your dreams. And it's like, okay, I have no idea what that book's about, and much less why I should read it. And so the more you can niche down, whatever you want to call it, the more you can get specific with the topic of your book, the better book you're going to write, the better your book's going to sell, and the more people that you're going to help at a deeper level.
I want to go back for a second. You're sharing such great information, but I want to round out a little bit more of your story. You said you wrote a couple of books, and congrats. That's no small feat in and of itself. And before you had your wildly successful company, selfpublishing.com and Self-Publishing School, how did you figure out? Did you have a book writing coach? Did you have a trainer? Did you just follow some blog articles, YouTube videos? How did you figure out how to do your first one?
Yeah, good question. It was a mix of a bunch of things. I got some advice from a mentor on the writing piece, who he introduced me to the mind mapping concept. So I'm a big fan of who, not how. So who has done this before? Not how do I do it? I think this is a Dan Sullivan concept.
And
maybe?
Ben Hardy actually had been on the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great concept.
So who, not how. And so it was from a mentor. I also used this thing called the number one book system at the time, way back in the day. Helped me learn a lot of Amazon marketing. And then it's just kind of grown and evolved from there.
So again, if someone's trying to scour articles, this and that, it sounds like you're just going to go back to take the first step, get that rough draft written.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And really, my book published, I mean, I'm about to, depending on when people are listening to or watching this, the second edition of that is all about like, okay, don't scour blog post articles or any of that stuff. Like that is really meant to take people from blank page to your first 10,000 copies sold, kind of in a step-by-step sequential format. So that's the goal there, is just make it I can't even think of the word right. Make it as affordable as possible for folks to just go through the process and say, all right, now I've got an overview of the process. Either I can do this myself or I can work with Self-Publishing School and get a little bit of extra help.
When should someone jump into the editing of their book?
Yeah. So there's, the more writing method, right? So you got mind map, outline, rough draft, editing. And so once you've got the rough draft done, there's two or three steps of editing, depending on how you look at it. What I like to do and what I recommend and what we teach is self-editing. And so that's kind of the first step. And so if you zoom out a little bit, and I kind of walk through this in the book, but there's 8 milestones on your author journey, right? So there's mind map, outline, see if I can remember all these, rough draft, then there's self-editing, and then there's professional editing. So we're in that. So the first piece is what I recommend is a verbal read through. So where you actually read your book out loud. And
to be clear, let me pause you right there. To be clear, you're not saying make an audio book. You're just saying read it out loud to check for proofreading, line and content edits, whatever the case may be.
You're doing a self-edit, but I call it a verbal read through. And it's just a form of self-editing. And so then once you do that, then you pass it off to a professional editor. And so in the publishing world, they'll tell you there's anywhere between 7 to 10, 14 or more types of editing. I really think that's pretty confusing. And so I've kind of distilled it down to 2, where you've got content editing and you've got copy editing. Now you're going to hear like line editing, substantive editing. You've got like all these different, what
you can call it whatever you want. It's either right or wrong.
It's content and it's copy, right? So it's the content is kind of like a structural, like what is in the book. And then the copy editing is how are you saying it, right? And so content is, all right, am I saying the right things? Does it make sense? Does it flow? Are there stories? Are there content gaps? Like all that stuff. And then copy editing is my sentence structure good? Is my punctuation, grammar, all that stuff? So that's where you work with a professional editor, content edit, then copy edit. And then you're moving into, if we're coming back to the 8 milestones, then you're moving into creating your cover and your subtitle or your title and your cover. Then you're moving into formatting. Then you're prepping for launch. Then you're ultimately launching the book.
Interesting. I want to unpack this a little bit. Some people suggest start with the cover, and it sounds like you're saying start with the book.
Yeah. Some people like to start with the title. I don't. Personally, I like to start with a topic. And because if I start with a title, I'll spend a lot of time trying to figure out the title and not spend time doing what I actually need to do, which is get the rough draft done. Okay. And again, anything but writing the rough draft before you get your rough draft done is a distraction. And the mind is very good at writing a book is uncomfortable. And so it's the old joke. It's when a writer's on a deadline, because that's when they're popping up on social media the most, right? Because your mind wants to do anything but the uncomfortable act of writing. And so that's why I recommend it that way. But also you'll write your way to a title that may or may not be the theme of the book, right? And so I like to write to a topic and then get the title last and then create the cover last. There's a lot of advantages to that. You come to a better title. You don't box yourself in the content. You can also get feedback, and which is the beginning of the marketing phase, is getting feedback on your title, on your cover, things like that. And so
that's when publishing is fun, because now you get to engage everyone with the marketing and getting the feedback. But you talked about it being uncomfortable process. I know when I was doing one of mine, I literally made a post on Facebook that was like, I'm supposed to be writing right now, but nothing's working out. So what good YouTube links do you have for me?
Yeah.
Why is it such an uncomfortable process?
Because I think it's difficult. You're crystallizing your thoughts into the written word, which for a lot of people in your mind, it's especially your first book, or really any book, I've got to figure out what I think on this topic. And it's not
you can't talk your way out of it. It's either right or wrong.
Yes. You're thinking I am crystallizing my thought into the written word. Let me think about this. But then I think also just the creation process of whenever you're creating anything, it's difficult. You're doing the hard work to create something, and it is not the most dopamine inducing activity, which means your mind which is hardwired for dopamine and for serotonin and other, just like hardwired for immediate gratification, wants that. And so, it does give a dopamine hit opening up social media or watching a YouTube video or something else. And so our mind says, this is uncomfortable, panic mode, and I need something to make me feel better. But I was, if you're, Stephen Pressfield calls this resistance, and it's the resistance of the creation process.
Yeah, the war of art, right?
Yeah. I had him on the Self-Publishing School podcast. That was a big get. I couldn't believe it. But it was just so interesting because he writes fiction, he writes nonfiction, he's written a screenplay, just all these different types of writing. And I think The War of Art is one of the best books on the creation process as a whole. It's really, really good.
So someone's gotten through the writing part. They did the self-editing. Should everyone use a professional editor, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No
questions asked.
Expand on that a little bit. That wasn't even hesitate. Yes.
Yeah. And I get it. Some people are on
and where do you find them?
Yeah. Great question. So, I get it. Some people are on a budget and that's totally understandable. And so you might be looking to save money or that sort of thing. But I would say absolutely you need an editor. I'm certain I'm doing a quick search here. I'm trying to remember. So I go in depth in this process on let's see where it is here. It is chapter number 9. In chapter number 9, I talk about how to hire an editor. I talk about how to save money on editing, all that good stuff. But to answer your question, there's really two resources, or there's two main places to hire an editor: referrals or freelance marketplace or marketplaces, right? So the best place is referrals from other authors or from people who have worked with editors. So like that is far and away the best. It's especially from happy customers of editors in your genre. Second piece would be marketplaces. So you've got there's Upwork, there is Readsy. We have kind of like an internal Rolodex for self-publishing school students where we've negotiated exclusive discounts on editors, cover designers, all that stuff. So you got referrals, you got marketplaces, and then most editors are going to charge either by the hour or by the job. I recommend going by the job. A lot of times they'll charge by the word. So there's a bunch of ways to reduce your costs. I mean, it's an investment, I had a mentor growing up. He said, Chandler, there's two things you can't spend too much money on in business: a good lawyer and a good accountant. Because if they're good, they will
They're
save
making
you
you
so
money.
much money. Exactly. And so similarly, with the book, it's the equivalent is a good editor and a good cover designer. And so those two things, they make such a huge impact on book sales, especially with your cover, but then, book quality, which results in referrals and more sales with your editing. And so it's really, really important. You want to look for a hungry professional, but this is someone who will help make the book better.
Now, talking about the budget, what would you say someone should allocate for the budget? And also, don't skimp on the editing and the cover,
Yeah.
but, what are your thoughts on someone going, well, I don't have a lot for this, 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 this? It's like, well, is this the right timing then? Because it's like, if you're not going to put in a certain threshold, and I get it, not everyone has all the money in the world, but even if you do, people don't want to waste it. When we're getting stuff, I'm sure you're not just throwing it out the door. I know I'm not. But at the same time, it's like, what would be a reasonable in your mind, so that way someone's not going, well, they're charging me $300 for this when I could get it for $200, when really most people are charging $7 or $8 and they're not even in the ballpark to begin with, and it's actually a good deal.
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically it's somewhere between 1 to 3 cents per word. So in common English, though some people are like, wait, what? In common English, I mean, it's a few $100 is typically what you could expect to pay. Now, if all-in cost for producing a quality book is anywhere from a few $100 to a couple $1,000 on book production costs. You got your three main costs are going to be editing, cover design, and formatting. Those are really
good. Formatting. Let's talk about that. That's a fun one, or can be.
Yeah. It's really that one's not too bad. I'd say the other two are more important and more expensive. So if it's just common ebook formatting, that's pretty simple. If you're doing more print formatting, that can be a little bit more. That can be a few $100. But we have it's this thing called a book outline template generator on our site. You can press a couple buttons and it'll spit out a 25-page pre-formatted Google Doc. And so if you use something like that, then all of a sudden, like the title headings are already formatted. They're like there's a bunch of little things like that to where.
So you've really simplified the process.
Yeah, you save yourself time and you save yourself money. And so then that's on formatting and on the whole process.
Yeah, and let's expand on that for people listening. If they're going, okay, I want to do an ebook, but I want to get the book in your hands, the actual book. What would you say to someone that goes, I just want to do an ebook versus I just want to do a printed?
Yeah, my personal recommendation is if you're going to do it. And so if you're going to do at least ebook and print. A big mistake that authors make is only publishing their book in one or maybe even two formats. If you publish your book in all three formats, so ebook, print, and audiobook, you're going to sell more books. You're going to make more money. Your royalty rates will be higher on ebook and audio, obviously, because there's no hard costs on per purchase. But publish in all three formats, you'll sell more books because different people in different genres just buy books differently. Right. So you're going to sell more books if you do all three formats. Now, you don't have to launch all at once. So if you're trying to save on cost, or even if it's just like, man, this is kind of overwhelming, you can stagger it. And in some cases, that's actually better because you focus all your effort on the ebook launch. Then a couple weeks to a month later, you come out with a print book. Then a couple weeks to a month later, you come out with an audiobook. So you have three launches, which just means that you're going to keep your book selling and you're focusing on one format at a time. And that can be really beneficial for driving book sales.
What have you found more people enjoy, audiobooks or ebooks nowadays?
Yeah, it's really pretty reader specific. I'd say audiobooks are on the rise in a lot of ways. But it's really reader and genre specific. And you've got kind of your broad kind of category shifts. But I mean, everyone's been saying that print books are going to go out of, people are going to stop buying them. People have been saying that for years, maybe even a decade or more. And
yeah, same thing with printers for computers. Ever since the internet, we're not going to need paper. How well has that worked?
But it's, I mean, analog, and people are still purchasing books, and you've seen it make it, I mean, big time comeback over the last few years, especially.
Now, with podcasts increasing also, do you think that's played into the audiobooks more, or two totally separate?
No doubt. No doubt. It's because people are getting used to consuming content in an audio medium, and it's getting, this kind of stuff is getting built into cars. So
Smart
now
devices.
it's like, okay, exactly. So now, I mean, I can really choose. Do I want to listen to a podcast? Do I want to listen to an audiobook, or do I want to listen to some other form of audio content? Like, it's pretty easy to rotate back and forth between the two. And especially if you are a podcaster, well, then you should 100% have an audiobook, because you're going to be marketing it to your audience of people who are already listening to you. Right. And so they're more likely to want, they're already telling you, I consume audio content. Right. And so just to segue that and say, hey, you can grab a copy of my book, an audiobook. And John Lee Dumas does this really well. There's an Audible bounty. So when people go download your book, if they trial Audible will send you, they're always changing the number, but it's like $50, $75 or something crazy like that, just for getting people to try Audible. And so, I mean, it's pretty amazing. So now all of a sudden, for me, it's a few $100 a month in Audible bounties. And for a lot of authors, especially if you do any sort of promotion towards that audiobook, it can be a good source of royalties.
So I think that's a good point right there, because for someone that's listening going, well, I'm not sure if I should invest in the cover, the this, the that, do it the best, because think about that. Okay, so you front a grand. Okay, big deal. But now you're making a couple hundred a month. The ROI on that exponentially over the next decade. This isn't a social media post or LinkedIn post where it's a one-time deal. It's like, it's a freaking book. So thank you for everything you've shared. I got a couple more questions before we thank our sponsor and come back. But the first one is, who would you say is your biggest success story out of I don't even know, the countless thousands and tens of thousands of people you've helped?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's so many. There's way
Narrow
more
it down to the first 100.
What's that?
Narrow it down to the first 100.
Yeah, so I would say this. I mean, I don't know if I'd say this like top success story, but I would say this was probably one of the more meaningful ones to me personally.
I love that. I love when people reframe it. And yeah, please.
So this is one of our students, Sean Sumner. He wrote and published. He joined self-publishing school years ago. Wrote and published a couple of books with us on physical therapy, which is he's a full-time physical therapist. And then his daughter saw it and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to do that. I want to write a book. That looks cool." And he said, "All right, go write 50 words and come back to me." Kind of thinking she wouldn't, right? And she came back a few hours later. She had 50 words written. And so her name's Emma Sumner. She published a book called The Fairies of Waterfall Island, a kid's book, at 8 years old. The book made $4,000 in the first 3 months. She went on to, she donated all that money to an autism awareness charity called Autism Speaks. She started doing local speaking gigs. She made like $1,200 at her first speaking gig at a local school. They paid her $250 and she sold a ton of books. She did another one, made like $800. Like now she's getting her quote unquote allowance, which is really just her monthly royalty check. And she's paying for school field trips. Like her confidence as a young woman doing that at 8 years old. The trajectory of her life, it's just crazy. So that's one of my favorite. Now she's inspired so many other kids to write and publish books. We've got kids showing up to our conferences, writing kids books. Like it's just so cool.
Thank you for sharing that. That is meaningful. And also I will throw in, instead of just giving the chore money, like here's how you work for someone to get a paycheck, like this is royalty, passive income. Shoot, I don't know about you. Did you have that at 8?
I did not.
I didn't either. I started my first company at 12, but I didn't have that at 8. Like, fantastic.
When you're teaching life skills, right? It's a project. Mm-hmm. It's a project with your kid that teaches them a dozen life skills in the process, while also creating an asset that will be with them for the rest of their life.
For sure. I have one fun question before we thank the sponsor and come back. Yellow or black?
Yellow.
All right, good. Matches my tie. This is the Wheel of Whatever, and your question is, where would you like to travel that you haven't been yet?
Oh, Bali.
No kidding.
it's just amazing from what I've seen. I haven't been there, but Bali and a lot of places in Asia. I've never been to Asia.
Okay, very good. Yeah, it does look good. I haven't been there either, but that's a good one. We're going to thank our sponsor real quick and come back for the Imperfect Action Round. Titles, cover designs, and promotion, oh my. You are all excited to achieve your goal, maybe even dream, of becoming an author to serve more people with your business. But it's turning out to be a lot more than you expected, huh? I get it. I've done it numerous times personally. Visit getmybusinessbookpublished.com today to take the first step on making this process enjoyable, dare I even say fun, and most definitely profitable. Your business and audience depend on it. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. Take it from a few of my authors, like Lori.
And I went from having an idea and a possibility to actually getting my book published.
Or Catherine.
Thank you for making my mom #1 best-selling author.
Or Mary Alice.
What he got done for me in 3 days regarding my book launch, unmanageable.
John Cody.
I've worked with Mario over the phone and online, and he's been very helpful in getting me where I needed to go with promoting my books.
Rocio.
There's no way in the world I would have been able to do this with somebody else. I've attempted it in the past. It didn't serve me. As a matter of fact, I ended up more frustrated than anything. So this has been a very seamless process.
Adele.
If you're looking for an amazing business coach, I highly recommend Mario Ficini.
Or Bill Benner.
I can't make a higher recommendation than to work with Mario Ficini. He has been great for me, and right now I won't work with anybody else except for Mario.
Hey, their words, not mine. Visit getmybusinessbookpublished.com today to take the first step, and I look forward to hearing your transformation as our next video success story. Once again, that's getmybusinessbookpublished.com. And by real quick, I mean real quick. All right, and we're back with the Imperfect Action Round. Chandler, are you ready to take imperfect action?
Yes, sir.
All right, the first question I have for you. You ready?
Yes, sir.
What is the fastest path to the cash?
Fastest path to the cash is getting your first customer as fast as possible. So use the book to get leads, sales, and referrals for your business.
Excellent. Number 2, what is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
Biggest problem is not putting pen to paper, followed by getting their rough draft done. Fastest path to fix it is to write consistently. Take the 30-day rough draft challenge.
Excellent. Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
So customer lifetime value, create raving fans, create a touch point 1 to 3 months prior to a built-in renewal timeline with a next step and a phase 2 that is compelling and interesting to the customer.
Excellent. We've been talking about the books the whole time. I love getting them in business owners' hands. What books, in addition to The War of Art, have helped you in your business and life?
Extreme Ownership, one of the best books on leadership I've ever read. 80/20 Sales and Marketing, one of the best books on marketing I've ever read. And Influence by Robert Cialdini.
All great suggestions.
Up there with 80/20 Sales and Marketing. I think it's probably the best marketing book of all time.
Excellent. Where would you like people to learn more?
Yeah. So I've got a kind of a cool giveaway for listeners in the audience. So if you'd like a copy of my brand new book published, The Proven Path from Blank Page to Your First 10,000 Copies Sold, then go to publishedbook.com/Mario. So publishedbook.com/Mario, the first 50 people that go to that link. So this is a freebie for this audience. I will pay for the book. I will print the book. I will pack it. Well, I will not pack it, but I will have it packed and shipped to your door for free. So all you have to do is go to publishedbook.com/Mario. The first 50 people, just fill out the form. Tell me where to send it, and we'll ship a book your way, and it'll help you get started making progress with your book.
Excellent. Thank you for making that available. That's very generous. And thank you for everything you've shared, Chandler. It's been a pleasure.
Mario, thank you so much.
All right, Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. and God bless. You're already the expert, but have you transformed your expertise into a tangible asset that will generate qualified leads while increasing profit for you 24/7? And if so, how well are you promoting it? With the Expert Authority Effect publishing method, it's easier and more profitable than ever. Visit GetMyBusinessBookPublished.com today and take the first step to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Visit GetMyBusinessBookPublished.com and take the first step knowing it will be your very best and you're leaving it all on the field. Oh yeah, and it's also free. Once again, that's GetMyBusinessBookPublished.com.